Welcome back to the Nebraskabilities podcast. I am your host, Andy, here with my lovely co-host of Nate and Zach. And we're here to discuss probably what we all should have seen coming right from the get-go is another Husker loss. Nebraska falls on senior day to Wisconsin 14-15. And for a while, I was at the game and it looked somewhat optimistic, and I should have known better. I was definitely foolish in thinking, man, this might go our way for once. The defense for the most part played a heck of a game in terms of how bad they've been all season, stopping the run. It's the first time they've held any Wisconsin running back under 100 yards, and probably, I would guess, the last 4 to 5 meetings, if not more. So, I mean, if you would have told me that before the game, I would have said, well, yeah, Nebraska wins by like maybe, 3 or more points because, you finally stop Wisconsin to run. You make Graham Mertz, the terrible quarterback that he is, throw. And, as per Nebraska ways, we find a way to not be smart and throw away another game. And I know I had texted you guys after the game. I think this was more infuriating, not just because of the loss, but because this was the most beatable Wisconsin has looked in years that we have played them. And the fact that we suck even more to not beat them hurts more. You tell me that like your defense gives up 15 points on the game. I'm like, oh yeah, your offense is easily going to come down and help you. I mean, you probably win that game anytime you hold a football team to 15 points at least. Unless you're also my Denver Broncos, but that's a whole nother situation. I guess it's the same story. Both offenses suck on either way, but regardless, Nebraska falls to 3-8 on the season with an upcoming Black Friday tradition game against Iowa, which does not look optimistic. But we'll dive more into that later, as well as the time of recording this right now. Nebraska currently does not have a head coach yet. Things could change in 24 hours. Things could not happen through the weekend. So we'll dive more into just kind of as the coaching rumors have flared up and everything, but I'll pass it to Nate for just kind of his quick initial thoughts on the game, and then we'll circle back around.
Yeah, so that game was pretty much the epitome of they are who we thought they were. It was just a Big Ten grinded out, ugly sort of game. Weather seemed fine. I mean, it looked a little chilly out there, but I mean, no impacts
It was
weather-wise.
quite cold. I can't confirm. Not the coldest game I've been to, but it was quite cold.
Yeah, it wasn't snowing. You were fine. For my North Dakota standards, you were fine. But it was a pretty, I don't know, forgettable game again. There was a brief period there, as you mentioned, during that game where I was thinking maybe we can pull this out. We've got the 14-3 lead over them. We just got to play smart football and actually close out a game. But ultimately, Nebraska fumbled the bag and lost 15-14, dropping their 5th straight game in a row. So not too much to say on that front, I guess. Another unfortunate Nebraska loss. I don't know. That's about all I got. I'll pass it over to Zach on his quick thoughts here.
Stop me if you've heard this one. Nebraska suffers another one possession loss, or one score loss. And we managed to do it again. Like, at least at a certain point in the past couple of games, it was like, yep, okay, we are definitely kind of falling off the rails. Like, you kind of know what to expect to a degree. Like, yep, they have us beat. The weird part about this game was that for the first half, maybe even first 3 quarters, I thought to myself, like, are we about to beat Wisconsin in a year that basically feels lost to us, even though, like, beating Wisconsin would be amazing? Are we about to beat Wisconsin? And then, of course, I don't know, as superstitious as I am, I said that, and then we saw the fourth quarter happen, and then clearly I need to just stop having thoughts in terms of the Huskers, because again, superstition clearly takes over, and therefore it's my fault is how I take it. So Uh, it was boring is not the right way to put it, because it wasn't a boring game in general, but it just like nothing happened until Wisconsin needed something to happen, and then they made it happen. And so I kind of like you both said, we knew who they were, and Nebraska unfortunately kind of reverted back to the ways of old and played a fairly solid game in terms of just staying in it the whole time, and then getting to the fourth quarter and apparently forgetting what to do with their hands and dropping the game. So another tough loss. Not the most fun game to watch, but you know we move forward, and at this point, I think a lot of Husker Nation is in the same page. Where I think the remaining bit of hope is we have a new coach on the horizon, whoever it may be. As Andy said, as the time of recording this.
Yes.
I swear if something happens tomorrow on Thanksgiving, I'm going to have a lot of questions as to why, but
Mm-hmm.
but things are heating up in that space, which I know we'll talk about eventually, but I suppose let's jump right into the Wisconsin game, and I'll pass back to Andy.
Yeah. So, first half, Nebraska, having Casey Thompson, as we knew this entire season, gives us the best chance to win this game. And, scoring, I don't think we score both those touchdowns if Casey's not playing. You might score one, you might get a field goal, but, just having Casey back just kind of gave the offense not a new sense of life, but just more life than they had the past 2 to 3 games when they haven't had Casey in. And, I thought it was very brave. Obviously, a couple of his runs were just improvised scrambles, and I was yelling in the stands the entire time, slide, 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 because you cannot afford to get hurt because you're already injured, and we don't have anybody else that we can confidently play. But Casey took some of those hits, got right back up, and survived the whole game without being hurt or killed. But I think as a coaching staff and as a quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, Whipple and Mickey both have to tell Casey, like, hey, we know you're hurt. We know you want to play tough, but like you have to be smart about this too. Thankfully, nothing happened with him, but that just kind of goes back to what we've seen all year. It's just kind of we need either Mickey or Whipple just to kind of step up and take leadership and be like, hey, stop this, play smart, just do what you're supposed to do. And not, yelling at Casey for taking off and running, because he got us some big plays and some big first downs. But, you just in the situation the offense is, you have to kind of realize that I can do some things, but I also have to be smart about my body and my health to kind of help this team and help get us the win. But outside of that, a couple of those touchdowns, both Trey Palmer touchdowns, nice to see him get it back on track. Not in terms of yardage, but just at least, getting some confidence boosting touchdowns that he hasn't really seen the past couple weeks. And obviously that goes back to the quarterback play that we all know about. But, nice to see him get back on track for that on the offense. In terms of defense, we knew what Wisconsin was going to come in and do. And I know that we'd mentioned this last week on the podcast was the key to beating Wisconsin is obviously stopping the run and making Graham Mertz throw the ball, because Graham Mertz is not a good quarterback. But we have an innate ability to make bad quarterbacks look like great quarterbacks, which we did, especially towards the end of that game when Graham Mertz, I think one of our friends, Tyson, had said this is the Graham Mertz Heisman drive for the win. And yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Nebraska making backups look like Brady. And I understand
Correct.
Mertz is not a backup, but I still stand by the statement.
It was, making him throw the ball, because he threw that early interception to Hartzog, which, I know we had said it last week, but Hartzog has just come such a long way from where he was at the beginning of the season to now as a freshman cornerback, starting cornerback, even too. So that's credit to Bill Bush. I think Travis Fisher, who got moved to safeties and cornerbacks after the Chenander firing, just shows what a good job both those coaches have done of just getting, him especially ready to play, but the entire defense as well. Not that, they still gave up 235 rushing yards or however many it was. So that still is not a great stat to look at, but like I mentioned before, we had first time we've held a any Wisconsin running back under 100 yards. So I would have taken that 10 out of 10 times if you would have told me that before the game. And like, yep, I don't care what the score is. If holding somebody under 100 yards rushing, I mean, you have a better chance to win the game. Now, if you look at the box score and the stats, two of their running backs were pretty much near 100 yards, with Braylon Allen with 92, and then Ches Bolzani, or I don't even know how to say that
Lucy,
name.
I think.
Yeah, that guy had 98 yards. So, not 100 yards, but felt like 100 yards, especially if you watch the game of how they ran. I think it's just, the defense had some flashes of good and some flashes of bad, especially that's kind of the common theme we've seen in the second half of like the past couple games is they kind of come out, start strong. I guess besides the Michigan game, but I mean, Illinois, Purdue, Minnesota, Wisconsin, they kind of start the first half strong and kind of give you hope. And then the second half is when the Big Ten lines start to push us around and start to fatigue us and wear us down. And that's exactly what happened in the second half. Wisconsin just stuck to their game plan. They kind of looked how I thought they would look. To me, they didn't look panicked, kind of how like Minnesota never looked panicked in the second half when we played them. They just kept sticking to what their game plan was and, popped a few big runs, popped a few big play action passes. We cannot cover a tight end rollout to save our lives. They hit that play probably 3 or 4 times, and it was so obvious every single time they ran it, and yet we just did not adapt and adjust to it. It's going to be key when we play Iowa. Now, thankfully, Iowa's top tight end is out this week, so that saves Nebraska a little bit of defensive help with having, I guess, not having to guard Laporta for Friday, but. Wisconsin ran that tight end rollout, at least 3 to 4 times. And I saw it every single time. And I'm like, yep, he's going to be open in the flat and get another 7+ yards out of it. And he did every single time. But I mean, that's what you get with a great running team too, is, you have the ability to set up the play action pass, whether it's, it's a deep ball, a 5-yard slant or tight end, flat rollout. Once you run the ball 3 or 4 times, you make the defense think you're going to keep running the ball, and then you hit them with the play action and they're wide open. So, like I said, defense had some good flashes. Obviously kind of got fatigued at the end, gave up a couple big plays that set Wisconsin up into goal range, to eventually take the lead and score. And that's just kind of the groin kick that we all saw that was coming. I know that I texted you guys in the moment after we punted the ball, after we went 3 and out, and I go, all right, everybody just brace yourselves and prepare for heartbreak. And it happened, per usual. So I think I'll pass it to Nate there. I also know I want to get in kind of to how the offense ran their last couple offensive drives, because that is more puzzling to me of how we kind of let that game slip out of our hands when we had complete control of it as well. But before we get into that, I'll pass it over to Nate and Zach. And, if you guys have any thoughts on what you liked about either side of the ball from what you saw of the game.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at things overall from a box score perspective, when Casey Thompson goes 12 for 20 for 2 touchdowns, I'm thinking pretty close game at least, if not hopefully getting a W out of that. Unfortunately, he was also our leading rusher. So 33 yards of rushing on the ground there is not going to get you too far offensively. So while we were getting some things done in the air, we got those 2 touchdowns. Trey Palmer, as you mentioned, the ground game just has been really non-existent for a while now. I know Anthony Grant earlier in the year had a pretty good season going, and we mentioned before we got on he was nearing 1,000 yards. He just needs a 100-yard game here against Iowa to solidify that one. So we'll stay tuned for that.
Are we
That
making
could be a
bets on
rough. That could be a rough sell.
But past that, yeah, it has not been, or it's been pretty tough sledding for really a lot of offense moving forward. And I know a lot of that is going to come back to our offensive line, where stop us again if you've heard this before, but they can't block.
They are down bad, and
Yeah.
well, more than down bad that you could think of.
Yeah, there were times where I just felt sorry for Casey because I knew exactly what he was getting into as soon as they snapped the ball. Because you could see 2 or 3 of the defenders in the backfield almost instantaneously, and some of the plays Casey made were fantastic, and he was able to actually get something productive out of it, which was impressive in its own right. But a lot of the time, he was getting sacked or just barely getting back to line of scrimmage or throwing a rough pass just because he was being pressured so heavily. It was very reminiscent of what my team, the Minnesota Vikings, looked like against Dallas on Sunday,
Oof.
where I believe they
Big
were pressured
big oof.
63% of the time. So yeah, wasn't quite that drastic, but it was not a pleasant sight. So offensively, yeah, there were some bright spots. I mean, we got Trey Palmer the ball where we needed it. We got Vokalek a couple decent catches, and Marcus Washington was a decent contributor as well. But and looking now, I guess there was an Manning sighting too, which is always good
I
to see.
did see that. I think it was later in the game because there was one point
Mhm.
they went 4 or 5 wide, and I looked over and I'm like, is that number 5 lining up on the ball outside? I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's still Omar's number unless something went wrong.
Yeah, so offensively, 14 points is just not going to win you a whole lot of games. You got to have a little bit better of a dynamic, especially with how suspect our defense can be. And speaking of the defense, Malcolm Hartzog played well. Ernest Hausman again stepped up. He was a leading tackler. Garrett Nelson had himself a decent game. Um, but I I want to be mad at them for giving up that last drive, but they only gave up 15 points total. And if you're giving up 15 points, most teams are going to be able to overcome that. We're kind of the exception to that rule, but it is promising to see that our defense can come up with big stops, can come up and win things like the turnover battle and things like that. And uh, you know, they obviously didn't make the stop when we needed it, but they looked a little more competent than the offense did, at least. And that's kind of, I guess, what I'll hang my hat on there. So, not a great uh, way to finish out senior day, but they tried their best to give us some hope. And 14-3 in the third quarter, you got to hope they can grind it out for that extra quarter and a half, and they just couldn't. So, but with that, I'll pass it over to Zach on any of his thoughts on offense, defense, special teams, anything in between.
No, I I told you guys before we started, I'm kind of subjected to the point now that I'm just kind of ready for the end of the year, just so that we have that little bit of hope with the new coach coming in. But offensively speaking, again, stop us if you've heard this one, but tale of two halves. Not that the first half was anything to write home about, but
Hmm.
obviously, they figured out a bit of what they need to do, and they got that they got a pretty sizable lead, and we were like, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll finally solidify ourselves and get ourselves a win, one that at least is decent, and that we can say, okay, we might not be good this year, we still aren't, but that one happened, and that was cool. Um, but and then you saw it in the second half, outside of maybe one or two drives total, just a nosedive. And our offense, which is so crazy to think too, is it's and I know that we've faced stiffer competition as we've come through the year compared to the beginning of the year, but it's just wild to think that we went from being able to score anywhere between 20 points to 45, I think, against Georgia Southern. PTSD flashbacks there. But I mean, regardless, our offense just seems to have taken a completely different turn here in the last few games. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily count Michigan in that same category because Michigan's just good. But I mean, it's hard. It's hard to be like confident. Go even if they have the lead. So if we have another like 14-3 game at halftime or whatever it was, I don't remember off the top of my head, going into the half against Iowa, one, I'll be kind of surprised, but two, I will be like, okay, well, you just kind of wait for the inevitable collapse. And unfortunately, to me, as I was watching the game and rewatching the game in certain spots, I told myself like the defense is not the reason that we lost the game. Like, yes, they eventually ended up losing us the game technically, if we want to be like super specific about it, because obviously they gave up the final points for them to win the game. But they did not lose us the game overall because, again, like you both have pointed out, they held them to 15 points. Any other college football world or team, would have absolutely been able to say, we can overcome that. I would call 20 or 21 a pretty common score in college football, and Nebraska can't even reach that. And not only that, once again, Nebraska proving that they can't find a way to hold on to the ball for longer than what feels like either a 3 and out or the touchdown drive. And there's like no in between, it seems. And unfortunately, it seems like it lands more on the 3 and out. I mean, I'm just looking at the stats here, just team wise. The Wisconsin Badgers had the ball for 36 minutes and 57 seconds, almost 40 minutes. Basically, 2/3 of the game, the ball was in Wisconsin's hands, and they beat us by a point. If we could have 5 to 10 more minutes and make it even, there's a real good shot we would have had. Heck, they would have probably won if we would have held on to the ball for longer than a 3 and out in the last, what was it, like 3.5 minutes that we got the ball back on offense. We 100% could have won that game if we would have just done simpler play calling. That I don't understand sometimes what we're trying to do, or if we're trying to prove something to someone. I don't know if that's even accurate, true, whatever, but it's just watching the team sometimes. It's like they get to a point where they're not even facing total adversity because we were winning at that point. We were winning at that point. And it's like, yes, it's getting tough now, but like, finish out the game. And it seems like Nebraska just gets in their head. Not everybody. And we go all the way back. I'm not going to say it's Mickey's fault, or I'm not going to say it's anybody's fault, because, they've been dealt the hand that they worked with all the rest of the season. And again, I think Nebraska just needs to clean house essentially, or get a total new mindset, philosophy, whatever, whoever the new coach is, because we're at a point now where even in these winnable games, again, a Wisconsin team that was 100% beatable, that was beaten by all accounts until the last, 3.5 minutes for us. And we still found a way to lose. And I think that's the way that I take this game, is that we didn't win because we found the way to lose. Rather than we got bested and beat by a team, we found a way to give the game up. And I know that's probably like a doomer take on it, but still, it's like you watch this team and you're like, you wonder when the collapse is going to happen. And you make it through 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden you're like, I have this weird feeling of hope. Like we're still doing okay. Like things look to be okay. And then, and then of course the Heisman drive from Graham Mertz. I love that phrasing of it. It's so perfect. Just sends it all down exactly where we thought it would go. Admittedly, I know when we talked last week on this, we thought Wisconsin was going to come in and just absolutely destroy us, and they didn't. I mean, they destroyed our hope, but they didn't. I mean, they beat us by a point. And I mean, as much as we like to rag on the whole 1-score loss thing with the Scott Frost era, I mean, that's who Nebraska is right now, is teams that we can beat and have the ability to beat. We just don't, because we find the way to lose the game. And I'm not specifically pointing out players or anything specifically at that. It's just we are in such a spot where we can't get out of. And admittedly, I do think a new head coach is going to come in and be able to change that, provided that we actually get some line help, because God knows, it's like you guys said, Casey would have done so much better if we had a competent line. And I'm talking average. Average. We don't even need the top line in the country. We just need like middling. We don't even have that. We have some dogs. I'm not going to deny that. That's more on the defensive side, like Nate said. But I mean, it's tough because we could sit here and talk. For me, I could sit here and talk about this game till the sun goes down. Well, that's weird because it's already down, I guess. But I could sit here until the sun comes up.
I
Rather,
don't know. We could be recording this at 10 in the morning, Zach. Viewers don't know.
Well, they do now. They know that the sun is down when we're recording this. No, I could talk about these games till I'm blue in the face, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, because after after Friday, we're at some point, either over the weekend or next week at the latest, I would imagine we're going to have a new head coach announced. And at that point, all we know of Nebraska football that we've done so far is probably going to be different, hopefully for the better. But, keeping expectations in check, we'll see. But anyway, long-ish type of quick rant thoughts over, but I will pass it back to Andy for any continuing thoughts.
Yeah, just kind of what you were saying about just, this game wasn't lost on the defense. I mean, you hold somebody to 15 points, 83 passing yards that Graham Mertz throws, and you're like, wow, we must have really stuffed them all around. No, our run defense still sucks. But it's not the reason we lost the game. I mean, you look at what you had mentioned, Zach, like the fourth quarter. I just doing quick math. I mean, Nebraska had the ball 3 possessions, and roughly maybe under 5 minutes they had the ball in the fourth quarter. When you have a 14-3 lead, so that's not going to do it for you. And as we know, it showed that we lose the game like that. And what we've kind of seen from the offense, and especially from Whipple all year, is like the inability to adapt to what we have. There's no sense of creativity to trying to adapt around or scheme around our line. I thought we would have seen a lot more, just Casey rollouts or just bootlegs, somewhere to get Casey out of the pocket when he's dropping 3 steps back and he's already having to scramble or get out of the pocket because he's getting rushed. So, I thought we would have seen more of that. Like, okay, we know our line sucks, so how do we try to get around that? How do we try to scheme around that? And I think it shows definitely in that last couple series there where you have the ball in the offense to either kill as much clock as you can and just kill the game, or try to go down and get a score. And that possession where we punted the ball back to them with 3 minutes left, I mean, we all knew what was going to happen. I mean, the offense went 2 running plays and then a 3rd and 7 where Casey throws it 20 yards to the outside to Trey Palmer on the sideline in front of him that goes out of bounds, stops the clock for Wisconsin, gives them a basically free timeout. And it's those sort of situational awareness plays to where, I think at some point Mickey needs to step up and tell Whipple to get out of his own way. And that's kind of what I've noticed about Mickey is, we know that he's a first-time head coach. All of this new in-situation game awareness is new to him. And, we saw some of those flaws Saturday, is just kind of the time management, the game management down the stretch to where, if you get a couple first downs, you kill the clock more, you make Wisconsin use their timeouts, and you have a chance to further close out the game and kill the clock. And that's just some of those situations where I would have loved to have seen just some more offensive creativity or offensive aggressiveness. Instead, they kind of get conservative, go back into their shell, and the rest is history. But that's just kind of what we've seen, or at least what I've seen from Whipple all year, is just the inability to be creative on offense, to work around with what you got. Because to me, it still seems like he's coaching like that he has a 5-star quarterback and a Heisman candidate, Kenny Pickett and Jordan Atkinson, and a good like offense. I'm like, no, as the games have gone on, you clearly see that we are not what Pitt had last year with Whipple. So it's one of those. It's like just adjust scheme, like do something different than what we currently are doing. And I've seen no change on offense, which is maybe why defenses know how to play us, because they're like, well, Whipple's not going to change his attitude or change his play calling. So we're just going to plan for that, not plan for anything else, because he won't do anything else. So it's one of those. I mean, I guess the only exception I'll give to him is the Purdue game. Is like, that was good in game awareness to know that, okay, the Purdue corners are getting beat. Let's just keep doing what we're going to do and not, go back to running the ball, which we also did not do very well that game. But, at the same time, Zach, I agree. I'm just kind of ready to stop complaining about the offense and just get over the season, because we know Whipple's not going to be here next year. So we can finally stop complaining about him.
Makes me wonder if he's checked out at all too.
Dude, he could be.
I'm not saying like he was calling plays to, because like there were some creative stuff or some creative plays that he called up. Like,
right.
I don't think he's completely checked out, but I do think he's either on his way to either retirement or getting another job. But you can just kind of tell. I mean, I think him being up in the booth also
right.
wasn't. I don't think he likes that, and
No.
I have nothing to base this off of other than just pure speculation. But I don't know. Like if you're a coach that is on the sideline for however long he's been coaching, I can't imagine he likes being relegated to the booth. But
right, and that's I think those were some of like the whispers and the rumors when he first got hired, was like he was kind of like on his way out of the door at Pitt to retire anyway. So the fact that he even took the job was, maybe just one last hoorah or just a new change of scenery. Maybe it'll work out. But, I also wouldn't be surprised if he just decides to stay retired after this year. Cause we all kind of thought that's what he was going to do before he even took the Nebraska job. But yeah, I'm just kind of over just complaining about him and the offense, and just looking forward to next year. We know Casey said he'll make a decision after the season whether he's going to come back for next year or not. Obviously, I'm sure that's going to be dependent on who they hire, which is probably why he's wanting to wait to see. But I think that would save the new coaching staff a lot of ease and a lot of pain if you get to keep Casey for one more year, just so at least you have some sort of veteran quarterback at the helm. To help you kind of rebuild and get this thing off the ground again, instead of having to look for, our current backup quarterback room, which we have found out is not good at all. It saves you having to go try to find a transfer quarterback in the portal after the season ends. So yeah, it's just overall, it's just like I said at the beginning, it's just frustrating that this is the most beatable Wisconsin has ever looked since we played them, and we still couldn't get it done. I would have said that a couple of weeks ago against Iowa, or looking at Iowa, but now, not so much anymore. Iowa sort of kind of picked it up on offense. Their defense is still really good, but their offense is starting to find a groove, which is not good for us.
Their defense is going to tear us apart. Their offense could be bottom tier, worst thing in the league, and and their defense is they're gonna roll over us. I hate to be the doomer guy again, but it's not going to be pretty on Friday.
Probably not. It's just, at this point, I'm done ranting about the program, done ranting about the team. I think I speak for all of us and probably all of Husker Nation. Like, we're just ready for the new coach just to start talking about the optimism and start having the Kool-Aids be refilled in our jugs, because it's hasn't run empty yet. It's sure looking like it's pretty dry until we get a new head coach to get us our Kool-Aid back. So with that kind of transition, unless you guys have any other thoughts about the game, which we probably don't. Special teams didn't really do anything. So
I will say this real quick, just on special teams, just because I know, like, when we started talking about the Husker football season and everything, that last year, special teams was atrocious. The fact that we can now say, hey, special teams did what they needed to do, or there was some bad things, but, like, it's great. It's so nice to be able to be like,
game changers.
It's
we're
it's
not we're
yeah,
not
it's
kicking it to the wrong side of the field. We're not giving up punt
yes.
returns, kick returns. I mean, I would say Bushini and Bleak Road, who we got out of the portal, were like one of our best, besides Casey and Trey Palmer, but like they were one of our best gets out of the transfer portal coming into the season. I mean, they have proved that they are what they were said to have been when they went into the portal. So, Bushini's he hasn't really necessarily saved us a lot of games, but he saved us a lot of defensive drives where like last year, we're kicking the ball 25 yards. I mean, he's getting 40 plus yards each punt, pinning them deep. So
He's at minimum saved us a lot of special teams heartbreak, which
correct.
if we talk
Yeah.
about last year, that was the key. Like that was what everybody pointed as the key moments that lost us the game.
Right.
Hindsight being what it is now, maybe there was a bit more to it, but point still stands.
Right. But yeah, well, that's kind of our special teams wrap up there. It's good that we don't have anything bad to talk about with the special teams. So I know we've said that all year. It's like if we don't have anything to say about the special teams, it usually means that they didn't mess up too bad. So, but with that, before we kind of get into the Iowa preview, kind of what we want to see out of that game, we'll go into the hot goss mill. I know we talked about this earlier. Somebody saw Urban at the Miller Lumberyard and Waverly over the weekend, so we got that going for us.
We've been updated from barbershop talk to lumberyard talk.
So it's
all right.
You believe what you want to believe on Twitter and the message boards of crazy Husker fanatics, but some kind of notable news that has happened throughout the past week is kind of three names that were, one name I was definitely big on most people's coaching search lists, and a couple others that were on the list, but not really as big as Lance Leipold. Well, I guess all three of Mark Stoops at Kentucky, Kalen DeBoer at Washington, and Lance Leipold at Kansas all got offered and signed extensions to their contracts, ultimately taking them out of the coaching search for Nebraska. So all that news kind of happening within a week for sure, maybe the past 4 to 5 days. I know the Mark Stoops news was the earliest one to come out. Lance Leipold was just yesterday that news dropped. So we're just kind of at this point, I think, like I said, we've all just are kind of waiting just to see when we're going to get some sort of announcement for a press conference from Trev. It's like I've said the past couple of weeks, I'm like, the only reason you would not announce something before the Iowa game is if it's a current coach that you want that is like in a conference championship or trying to like let their coach finish out the season of wherever they're at, because it doesn't make sense if it was like Matt Rule or Mickey to not announce them before the season ends, because why would you want to wait that long? That being said, Matt Rule is still not out of the picture yet. From what we've heard, he kind of lost steam over the weekend, but has now picked up steam again in the past couple days here. One that we all are more or less shocked about that has picked up steam within the past 24 hours is Luke Fickell at Cincinnati, which I think, if Trev were to pull that hire off, I know we all agreed that we didn't think like the sexy home run hire was the way you had to go here. But if Trev pulls off Lou Fickell, that's your sexy home run hire right there.
I'll be the first to say that when we were talking about it early on and people were like, oh, we should go for Fickell, I was like, no shot. And if it happens, I'll be the first one to say I was wrong, and I'm happy about it.
I know we joked about before we hopped on is if Trev pulls that off, we'll just erect the statue of Trev in front of Memorial Stadium the day after he gets announced. But another couple names that were kind of been popping up more recently that have been thrown out there is Chris Klieman at Kansas State, which I also wouldn't think would be a bad hire. Definitely just where he's taken Kansas State to where they are today and just how successful he has been at building up programs. I don't think he would be a terrible hire, more of a preferred hire right now over Urban. I'm still not on the Urban train, but man, it's the only exception I would take to that is if he kind of groomed Mickey Joseph to be the next head coach. That would be my only exception to me wanting Urban here. Outside of that, one name that kind of really threw us all off that we didn't really see coming was Bronco Mendenhall, who is an ex BYU coach and Virginia coach that
Big
somehow,
no. Big
yeah,
no.
it's a very big
Yeah.
no,
No.
but somehow his name
Hard
has
pass.
gotten steam.
If if he's the guy, I'm out.
Right. It's I'm yeah. When Nate told us that was it yesterday or 2 days ago, and I was like, who? So that's the more surprising name that's picked up some steam in the past couple days. But the one that's like really exciting, really intriguing is the Luke Fickle hype that's been happening recently. But that's kind of what we know right now. Obviously, Mickey is still on the table. And Mickey spoke yesterday, and he got asked a bunch of questions about, or I guess no, he spoke Tuesday, right? Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah, he spoke yesterday. Just about what's the season going to do after, like what does it look like after the season for him? Has he talked to Trev? He said no, he hasn't talked to Trev about anything about the job yet. He just said after the season's done, he's going to take some time, and he'll be sitting on his couch waiting for a phone call. So that is also kind of makes me believe that like Trev's number one target is still out there, and it's not Mickey right now. That's just kind of how, I don't know if Mickey's just being humble and not trying to give us anything, but that's kind of how I took his answer too. Is Trev has some sort of number one and maybe number two guy that's not Mickey, and Mickey is just gonna be glad to help if he gets offered any sort of job here. But with that, I'll pass it to Nate and Zach. Kind of your guys' thoughts on the rumored coaches right now, who we would want to see.
Yeah, so I'll say it's just an exciting time to be alive right now. I mean, Nebraska
man.
football's been this has been a nice kind of reprieve, a nice little fallback that we can, I guess, follow for at least another week or so. It sounds like I'd be like you said, Zach. I'd be surprised if we hear anything on Thanksgiving. That it would be a
my
heck of a mic
stipulation to
drop.
that, Nate, is if we're sitting here a week from today and we still don't know who the coach is,
Yeah,
I will officially be going insane because
I'll have
there's no
concerns
reason.
at that point.
Yeah, I will be very much concerned that Trev started striking out with people after the Iowa game or after conference championship weekend. I don't know why would we wait that long, but I would start to be losing my mind about it. I know that much.
I would pump the brakes just a bit because it could be the fact that like a team is still in a conference championship, like a Cincinnati or something. So
Like Brian
I
Kelly.
would.
Remember like 2 minutes ago when I said to temper your expectations, Andy? That's the exact opposite. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but there's no shot.
Yeah, Andy, we're gonna pick up some scrub like Nick Saban instead.
You're right.
Let's be realistic here.
Not in the conference championship weekend. Sorry.
But no, this is what we're living for right now. This is the fun part of it. Nobody seems to know who it's gonna be. It's the Wild West of coaching searches right now. Everyone's throwing out a random name on Twitter and hoping it sticks. It's fantastic. I'm absolutely loving this time of year. Hopefully we don't have to go through it for a while after another week or so. But
Yeah.
who knows past that? But I don't know. I'm excited. It's gonna be hopefully someone that can bring a new culture to the program. Just bring something that I don't know we can all really buy into. And I don't know. I'm hoping it'll be that sexy home run hire, but also just someone who is level-headed and isn't going to be, I don't know, bringing in any sort of frills or anything. And I think we have a lot to offer at Nebraska. We're I know we're not the greatest program right now. We're not in the best spot right now, but I mean, we're still pulling in good recruiting classes. I know we've been top 25, top 30 for the past few years at least. And so it really just comes down to finding a coach that can develop the talent we have, because it's not like we're just bringing in these 1 or 2 star guys and hoping something sticks. We're getting respectable players out of high school. Past few regimes just have not been able to really develop or groom any of the talent. And so I think hopefully that's someone that we can get in. And I would really like to see, I don't know if it was necessarily a joke tweet or not, but one of the sports writers for Nebraska mentioned that we need to just kind of clean house and then start over, bring in a coach that's going to just recruit hard on the O-line, D-line front. And I kind of like the idea. I don't know about you guys, but that
Didn't
seems to
wasn't
be
it
where we're getting beat.
wasn't it something like just go 90% all in on recruiting just linemen or
Mhm.
whatever? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't hate it because, I mean, we've been clearly losing the battle in the trenches for a while now. And that seems to be somewhere where you can really flip things pretty quickly. You get the right guys in there that are, power guys who can help you on both sides of the ball. And I think that could be fun to watch. Use that, get your 90% of your guys on O line, D line, and then build through the transfer portal. Get your playmakers, get your quarterback, your wide receivers, etc., through the transfer portal. I mean, sky's the limit there, it sounds like. I mean, even if it's not a long term solution, just for your next 4-year plan or something, get the offensive defensive line set, get your playmakers through the transfer portal, win a few games here and there, really build the program back. It'll be a rebuild. I won't sugarcoat that, but it could be more fun than what we're expecting. And so
I
just
think
kind of
and
bring it home, hopefully.
I think that's all Nebraska fans want right now
Yeah.
is fun. Because what we have right now is not fun.
Nope.
Fun with a little bit of hope sprinkled in would be nice. Like and just someone, I mean, we've got the brand, we've got like Nebraska, people still know Nebraska's Nebraska. We have NIL that's sitting there. We have plenty of money we can throw at the situation if we want to. It's not like we're scrapped for anything like that. And we just need to be able to find a guy who brings his own philosophy in, I think. And that's something I've read that's we need to really hit the ball to the park with a coaching hire, is not someone that's going to say like previous coaches where we're going to be the best in the Big Ten because I say so, or the Big Ten's going to adapt to us.
Yeah,
Talking points
that'll
like
never
that.
happen whenever Coach Cover comes in here. Ohio State's the exception
Yep.
because they've been good forever. So,
Yep. We need to find a philosophy, find a football brand, and stick to it for however long the next tenure is. And we just need to be ourselves and find a leader who's willing to just put the philosophy in the ground and kind of lead past that. So that's kind of my thoughts on coaching, I guess, and what I'm hopefully excited and hopeful to see by next week. But I'll pass it over to Zach on any of his thoughts.
No, you've hit the nail on the head, I think, perfectly. I know we had talked about it, and I know that Nate and I both sent, like 4-paragraph long text messages to each other after the game. But I agree 100%. I still think that the Nebraska brand, even though we use the term down bad, I don't think Nebraska as an overall brand and job for somebody coming in isn't as, I don't think we're as down bad as we kind of as fans watching the football itself feel, because Nebraska still is a top, and I say top program in the sense of like when you see the N somewhere, whether it's the Netflix N now on the helmet or the old block N, most people know. I mean, if you're thinking football, regardless, they know that's the Nebraska N. So I mean, our brand still has clout, if you will. And I do think, with NIL, that's one of the reasons specifically that Casey Thompson even said he transferred here, was because he saw really good NIL opportunity. And I'm hoping that also is what propels him to stay, because regardless of how bad the year has been, he has been a pretty good quarterback for us. And I mean, that kind of goes into the rest of the philosophy behind Nebraska just itself, is that whoever you get in here as a coach can use the brand and say, hey, you can play for Nebraska. You can play for let's use the example that it is Matt Rule or Luke Fickell, and you can say, hey, you can come play for Luke Fickell at Nebraska. He's got an idea. He's got a thought, and here's how he's going to turn the program around. And again, I know we both have, or we've all touched on it. As long as we don't hear any buzzwords or philosophy, Nate, you touched on this perfectly. Is as long as we have somebody that brings in a philosophy, or even if their philosophy is, I'm going to do what my job is and get a football team ready. If that's what we hear on whoever the coach is on the introductory press conference that says, hey, I don't have big schemes, I don't have big plans to overtake the Big Ten. I want to come in and build a competent team. I'm going to be happy with that. And again, I think, most people think that college football rebuilds take anywhere between 4 to 5 years or longer. Thus why when Scott Frost was hired, everybody was like, give him 4 years, give him 4 years, give him 5 years. At the time, I would say that was an accurate statement. Now with NIL being as big as it is and the transfer portal being as solid as it is, again, if we start focusing on the line and we get the right people in from the transfer portal and we get the right guy, which is the key, if we get the right guy, and I don't know, that could be multiple people. We just got to get the right guy for what we need for us. And if we can get those, then Nebraska could be quote unquote back, and I say it very loosely, but they could be back within, they could be bowling next year. I don't necessarily think that's quite going to happen. I think that's ridiculously, out there, but it's not impossible. And again, I know I've used this example multiple times through the season as we've talked about it, and it has proven me slightly wrong. But I mean, Mel Tucker did it at Michigan State, and he went. What was it, 10-2? I think, maybe not that much, but
somewhere around there.
But it was he got a bowl in his year there as soon as he came in, and granted, I'm not saying that we need to build our team off the transfer portal, but we could see success within a year or two off that transfer portal because of the Nebraska brand. So I know I said Nate hit the nail on the head, and then I went on a 5-minute tangent with it, but basically, I agree. I think Nebraska is, ironically enough, as bad as we look right now, football wise. I do think we are still a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Highly touted job. That's not the word. It's not coming to me, but I think we're a job that looks attractive. That's the word I'm looking for. I think we're an attractive job for whoever wants to get it. And I do think that I think it should be commended that Trev has been so quiet about the search. And
Right.
I know like it drives people crazy because we all just want to know. But I also have this theory that we're like, well, it wouldn't make sense if it's Mickey, just announce it earlier, or if it's Rule, he's not coaching, announce it earlier. I have a theory that this is all being done on purpose because then it's like, don't let people know your moves. Essentially, like I think Trev is playing somewhat of a version of chess, where he's got it tied down to where people don't know, people are taking guesses, and yes, it would make sense if these guys aren't coaching now. So if it is somebody like Urban or Rule or Mickey, they could be announced right now. But I don't think that's why I think Trev is doing his job and saying, don't let anybody know. Whether that amounts to good or bad, we don't know. In my gut, for whatever reason, I feel like it's going to be a decent hire. And I say decent as in it might not be the sexy hire, which is Fickle at this point, but if it's Rule, he kind of fits my category. I've come around on him, and he fits my category of not necessarily the most sexy hire, but definitely somebody that's got a good resume, and I think could be a good guy. My only issue with him, not even issue, is just how long will it take him to adapt back to college football after being in the NFL, with how much has changed since he's been to the NFL. But that is what it is, and I don't think that's really as big of a deal because I think there's people that are aware of all these things that will help out. So, I mean, there's a company in Lincoln that specifically does NIL stuff for them. So he might not even necessarily need to do anything outside of be the face of it to say, hey, come play for Nebraska. But,
right.
With that, I know we've kind of already touched on it, but who are your guys, like, with the 3 or 4 names that we have now? Like, if you had to rank them, and if we were if it was all on the board, who would
Hmm.
you want? Like, who's your top one? Who's number 2 and who's 3?
Mine is, now that Fickle's picked up a lot of steam. I would probably go Fickle, Kleiman, then Rule. Mickey will be 4 if I did include a fourth, but top 3 would be those 3 for me right now.
Right on.
I think I'm somewhere in the same ballpark as you, Andy. I'd
Mm-hmm.
say probably Fickle number 1, definitely. He is, as you mentioned, kind of that home run sexy hire as we've all been kind of talking about. I think I'm gonna go Mickey 2 and then Rule 3. I
Ooh.
still got Mickey pretty high on my list.
Ooh, I like
I
it.
think he can get the job done.
I am going to go slightly different outside of number 1. If we can get Fickle, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sold, and Trev can be the athletic director for another 30 years. He's got my vote. As if that means anything. Number 2 for me would be Rule. Like I said, I've really come around on him. I don't necessarily think he's great, but I think he's really good. I think he's like, if you're given rankings, Fickle is like a 9 or a 10.
Mm-hmm.
Rule is somewhere between a 7 to an 8, and then under that, is not really that bad. But then my number 3 would probably be Mickey. I think Mickey would do well with his staff. The problem is, who would he have as his staff?
Right.
That's the kicker. Is can we afford to use an experiment on Mickey, which could pay off, but
Mm-hmm.
man, I don't know.
That's the thing that's kind of holding me back about Mickey too, Zach, is, like Fickle or Kleinman or any other coach, like you would know who they would bring in with their staff. Uh, whether there's no guarantee that they would keep Mickey or like Bill Bush or anybody on the current staff either. But you would like to see that. At the same time, yeah, that's what's holding me back about Mickey, is like you have no idea who he is going to bring in. And that's the part that I would love to know about beforehand. Uh, it's just, yeah, we don't know who he's going to bring in, what his offense, defense would look like. Because I know we've mentioned it before, like, he was a wide receivers coach, and he kind of skipped being promoted to an offensive coordinator and went right to interim head coach. So he's never had to oversee either one side of the ball, let alone an entire team with recruiting, operations, and everything that goes into being a head coach. So we kind of don't know what like offensive identity Mickey would want to go to. Obviously, if he was hired, he would still keep Bill Bush. Because he had mentioned that in his press conference yesterday too, is just how he and Bill, their days together at LSU working together, they just kind of get along so well. So I'd imagine if he was kept on, Bill Bush would be defensive coordinator 100% for sure.
I'd be good with it.
Right, and that's one of the maybe more obvious answers to his coaching staff. Maybe most of the defense, I don't know. He might just let Bill Bush make some changes uh, in terms of other assistants, but it's the offense more that I'm intrigued about because that's been kind of the kicker for us this entire season. Is the offense just kind of looking good and then just being flat out awful, but with the same time, the other coaches, they can bring their current offensive, defensive staffs with them. Again, no guarantee that they keep Mickey either, which I know a lot of us would love. But at the same time, Mickey said yesterday too, is yeah, if I get offered any sort of job, I would love to, stay here coaching at Nebraska. But he also understands it's a business, and business decisions have consequences too. So it would be nice, but I'm in the same boat of those are my top 3 guys, and if Mickey's kept on for any of them, I would love that, but it would be hard for me to believe, especially if you get like Fickle or Kleinman, that they would keep Mickey on. Um, but we had that situation too when Callahan got hired. They kept Turner Gill on from Solich's staff for like a year because Turner Gill knew that, I'll try to show you to the Nebraska ropes. This is what Nebraska's like. And then Turner got fired a year later, type thing. So I don't want to say that'll happen with Mickey or want that to happen with Mickey, but that's kind of like how that option would be if that happened too. Was maybe Mickey sticks around for another year or so. And then maybe another Power 5 school calls for him too. So that's also a real possibility. And I'm sure, I don't know if necessarily he wants that, but I'm sure other schools might see what he has done here after Scott and be like, if he cleans and works on some of those things, he can be a good head coach somewhere someday for a Power 5 school. But yeah, I don't have much else to say with the coaching search rumor mills. What we want, unless you guys have anything else to say before we kind of dive into, you know, the last game of the season.
No, I am excited. I will say this just like overall quickly. I am excited next week to hopefully be able to talk about the new coach because
I
then
sure
we'll
hope we're sitting
finally
here talking about it.
all of this discussion will finally come to a head and we'll be able to have something to talk about as in new info and hope maybe.
Right. Yeah, I'm hope we're sitting here next episode talking about our new head coach. Maybe a Husker win. Not optimistic about that, but it would be a nice little cherry on top of that episode too. Let's talk about a win. But yeah, so going into Friday, 3 p.m. Black Friday game per usual. I'll sure a lot of us will either be really happy, really sad, or distraught because the U.S. World Cup soccer match is at 1 o'clock before our game. So back-to-back sporting events that will either help my emotions or just make me more sad watching football, depending on how the U.S. game goes. But nonetheless, last game of the season. I know, like we said, we kind of all just want the season to be over for just how awful it's been at this time. But at the same time, it's also like one of those, enjoy it while it lasts because I'm sure in a couple months I'll be complaining about, man, I just want Husker football to be back, like in some capacity again. I'm watching it, so it goes both ways to where I want it to be done, but I know I'll complain in a couple months of, oh, I kind of miss watching Husker football on Saturdays, going to Memorial Stadium, all of those fun things. But, I think that's, if I offer any sort of advice for anybody and optimism is, we might suck, we might lose, but just kind of enjoy watching the last Husker game of the year. And hopes that we get a new coach sometime after that, shortly after that. But, uh, like a lot of Mickey's press conference for to yesterday was a little bit about just kind of his future, but also what he's learned about coaching and kind of looking forward to the Iowa game. I think one of my favorite quotes that he said that he's learned as being a head coach is to stay off Twitter and stay off social media. Which I think that's just good advice for anybody, but at the same time, I love Twitter. We all love Twitter. At least the three of us do for sure. But he kind of talked about the game. Acknowledges that Iowa's defense is really stout. You know, as much as many top 10 defenses we've played all year, I think this one might be the best in terms of consistently being aggressive on defense, forcing turnovers, even on special teams too. Iowa forces a lot of mistakes and a lot of turnovers that they make you do. So Nebraska will definitely have their hands full in the offense. I don't even know where to start with what I want to see out of the offense. Obviously, I want to keep saying every game, establish the run, get the run game going. But we've done absolutely jack with that. And I don't know if Whipple will get out of his own way for that. He just might air the ball out and be like, I don't care. It's my last game. I'm just going to throw whatever is out there. And if he does that, I hope it's creative fun that he throws out there that works. Because, at this point, what do you got to lose with this
YOLO
game?
bombs to Trey Palmer all game.
Right. That's kind of how I
More
felt
delete.
against the Wisconsin game too, when they didn't go on some of those 4th and 2, 4th and 1. So I'm like, go for it. What do you got to lose? I mean, yeah, you might win, or you might not win, but at the same time, I mean, like, you're not playing for anything. Wisconsin certainly isn't playing for, a Big Ten championship division at least. But oh yeah, I forgot to mention, like, this obviously comes down to us in the way of either Iowa going to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship, or if they lose to us, they don't go. So Iowa's going to have a chip on their shoulder to come out and be aggressive and win, because if they win, they go to Indy to probably either get mauled by Ohio State or Michigan, depending on who wins that game this weekend. Uh, my money's probably more towards Ohio State, uh, probably kicking their butts right now. But I thought about that last year too, and Michigan rolled over Ohio State. So I guess it could go either way for that game. But regardless, I think if the offense can kind of make Iowa do what they did in the early part of the season to just kind of be stagnant on offense and not be very good, I think we do have a better chance to win this game. Uh, like I said, the past couple of weeks, Iowa has picked up a lot of momentum on offense. They've been scoring touchdowns on offense. Not very many, but they have been scoring offensive touchdowns that are not defense or special team touchdowns. So that kind of gives them a little motivation, a little boost to be, more competent on offense. But I think it's the same concept this week is if you make Petrus throw, you have a better shot of winning this game. It's like like we said before, holding a quarterback to 83 passing yards, you're like, wow, we must have really killed them because we played so well. Now it turns out if you give up 235 yards of rushing offense, you know, you also aren't going to do well. But I think that's also my key to the game is, make Petrus, make Iowa throw. Uh, I hope Bill Bush is, like I said before, Laporta, their top tight end, is out for Iowa. So that kind of helps with uh, kind of guarding against one of the better tight ends in the Big Ten, maybe the country. But Iowa's done that to us for years, is they love using the tight end, either play action, roll out, just getting their tight ends involved in the passing game, and we usually can't stop them. So hopefully Bill Bush kind of realizes that and adapts to stopping, guarding the tight ends more in that concept. But yeah, I'll pass it to Nate. See what your guys' thoughts, what you want to see out of our final game of the season.
Yeah, so I think what I want to see out of this final game of the season is kind of what I've wanted to see for a lot of the games since Scott Frost got fired. It's just a competent team that's competitive and gives us a chance to stay in a game and win. What that means, I don't know exactly on offense or defense, but I mean, I think our defense is competent enough to stop them on offense. I know they've been on a bit of a roll offensively lately, Iowa has, but I think our defense, I mean, we held Wisconsin to 15. We've held a lot of teams, I mean, within reach at least. They haven't, besides Michigan, they haven't necessarily been blowouts or anything. So I think our defense can at least keep it close. Offense, I would like to see. Yeah, I don't know. YOLO bombs to Trey Palmer, I think, is a good, a good barometer for kind of what I want to see. I wouldn't be upset with seeing, I don't know, just some creative and good plays out of it. Establish your own would be nice if we had an offensive line. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to have to make plays through the air as best we can. It's probably going to lead to a lot of interceptions, but if we can break a few of those plays, get Trey Palmer, run some good routes, I think there's at least a chance there that we can pull off an upset. So,
And we saw that with Wisconsin. Is I know I say this every week is if you get any sort of turnover or big defensive play on defense or special teams, uh, just to create some momentum for your offense, it worked. And, we saw last week Hardjaw got the interception. Next offensive drive, we come down and score a touchdown. So it's just so some of those key like momentum plays, that may not look particularly well, like Graham Mertz throwing a duck into the 20-mile-per-hour headwind that just kind of hung up there for Hartzog. But, I've said it every week is, you just get, some of those key turnovers, one or two turnovers, just get some good, better field position momentum for the offense. Just get your offense set up in good field position. Good things can happen. We saw it with off Rutgers. Is you get the turnovers and then you come down and you score a touchdown. Just get any sort of momentum for your offense after a turnover or anything like that. So I think I agree, Nate. You're going to need the other two phases of the game to help your offense this last game of the season.
Yep, I agree with that, and it'll be tough. It'll be an uphill battle, but I don't think it's exactly out of our reach necessarily. So I mean, that's obviously a very optimistic outlook on it, but I think it's certainly a possible and a plausible outcome. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Zach on any of his quick thoughts on the upcoming game.
I've said it all year, and I'll continue to say it. Well, all year since Frost got fired is consistency, which I'll keep pushing for it until the season's over because, unfortunately, I haven't seen it yet. But this will be a game, at least when our defense and their offense is on the field. It's going to be a game of stoppable object versus movable, stoppable force versus movable object. It's going to be great because it's either going to be like what we saw for the entire Wisconsin game, where like nothing happens and it's just not exciting, and then their defense just kills us each time. But honestly, what I kind of want to see just some last minute surprises. We're not going bowling this year, so going out with a win over Iowa would be pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to see just some kind of surprising plays. Like, I joke about YOLO bombs to Trey Palmer, but I mean that would be pretty great. I think seeing some flashy plays like that, and I don't think we're going to be able to establish the run game. We just don't have the players up front to do it, especially against Iowa's defense. That's the other thing is if we can score a little bit on them, I think I'll be pleased because their defense is solid. And not only that, I was looking just statistically. So they have total yards for the season on offense is 253 yards. So I mean, it's not like they're burning down the barn or nothing. But they also have only allowed 273. So they're really stout on the defense. And I guess like I said, I just want to see us come out and fight and play some consistent football because, I know I've already succumbed myself to saying, this one's probably a loss, but I mean, it's not totally impossible. And I think that's the thing is if we can go out with a win and kind of carry some momentum for next year, whoever the coach is, and come in with a chip on our shoulder and be like, okay, we were able to improve at the end of the year, even if it is just one game. We still were able to improve, and we would finally have beaten Iowa again for however long it's been since we last did it. So for me, yeah, consistency, some surprises, maybe some fun, I guess. And honestly, this isn't even about the game. I am ready for the game to happen so that way we can finally look forward to the new coach.
Correct.
Regardless of the outcome, I think that's just the key thing on everybody's mind is, let's get through the year and see who we got coming in because that's going to make or break, I think, a lot of Husker fans, at least probably our age. So did we want to predict our scores now?
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly where I was going to go. If anybody has a score off the top of their head first, while I think of mine.
I think I got mine all. So I was 10.5-point favorite, which is up from the 9 that they opened with, I think. And we have under 38.5.
We did cover last game, and the under did hit. So think about that.
Yeah,
the under hit at 29 when it was 39. So
all that tells me is never bet.
But I think I'm going to go. I'm going to keep up. I'll be our Husker optimist, our local Husker optimist here. But I think Nebraska 2014. I think that's gonna be my prediction here. I think out of spite, I think we beat Iowa and keep them out of the Big Ten title game. So
I will go. I'll be optimistic too for the last game of the year. Why not? But I'll go 17-14 Nebraska. And we finally get a game-winning field goal that Iowa has done to us so many times.
Man, put me in a tough spot here. Then,
lose for predictions this year, Zach.
Drink the Kool-Aid, Zach.
We all suck.
We might as well be positive. It's the last game of the year, and we're gonna have some news hopefully next week to talk about. Whether it's good or bad, we'll see. We're going to finally be at the end, I think. So I want to see us with a win. I'm going to predict a win. It's going to be one of those games that on paper it should be all Iowa, but Nebraska's gonna do the thing, and somehow they're going to pull it off. And I'm going to say 21-17.
All right.
Which is not because I was going to actually say the same thing. I was like, man, it'd be nice to have that last minute field goal that wins us the game. But, well, I guess it could. I mean, we'd be technically ahead at that point still, but it'd be the one to seal the game. So.
We are the underboys. We don't believe in points this game.
No. Specifically because of how just rancid the offenses are.
Yep.
I mean, ours on paper looks better, but no, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah. So with that, hopefully, like I said before, is as much as the season has sucked and how much we suck as a team, we want it to be over. Just last Husker game of the season. So hopefully, win or lose, we all can just kind of enjoy the last winning moments of Husker football this season. And hopefully we're sitting here next week talking to you about a new Husker coach along with hopefully a Husker win too. But more importantly, hopefully a new Husker coach next time that we record. If it's longer than that, then I'm going to go insane a little bit, but it'll be fine. But, you can always check us out on our socials, on Facebook, on Twitter. Let us know anytime what your guys' thoughts, questions you want to ask us, thoughts that you want us to discuss on the program. Just check those out on Facebook and Twitter. And as always, if it's a possibility, it's a Nebraskability.